fiction, science fiction, horror, fantasy, crime, LGBT, thriller.
You have now entered the House of Mystery.
Welcome back into the House of Mystery. I'm Al Warren, Mr. Joe Smoker Goldberg.
In the house.
In the house. What's going on? You had a big long vacation, so you're all rested and happy and excited.
Yeah. I drove to Central States to go see my grandkids and my kids. So my son's getting married in November, so and I'm actually going to be the officiant. So take that. I'm ordained. I minister, Joe.
Oh, well, there you go.
Online. I won't go to the story about Tennessee and online ordainment. That's still a question, but yeah. So I gotta get myself holy or something.
Well, I guess so.
Game over. Give up. Have a nice day.
Wow. See, I didn't know that. I'm sitting amongst royalty.
Not royalty. I'm working my Pope wave just in case.
Yeah.
It's non-denominational. I actually looked up. They do everything. It's cool.
Why don't you run for the next Pope?
It's John's taking. He's a Chicago guy, so take that.
So that's what I
He's
mean.
a White Sox fan, so we can't go so far.
Well, it's gone bad when that happens.
Yeah, he's not a Cubs fan. I think I'll take the Cubs score right now.
How could you be a Pope and be fan of anything sports?
Well, the White Sox are really happy because they're hoping that he would do something to get them actually to win games. So far, no good.
But was he going to bless them? It's going to throw water.
It's like they were praying for victories, and they're better than the Rockies. So I'm not that I'm a big baseball guy, but everybody knows that it's the White Sox and the Pope.
Oh boy,
Yeah, that's all Chicago's got. So. Thank you, Pope. Have a nice day.
Well, at least you have something. You're on the map now because of it, okay?
Well, yes,
right?
They're excited. It's exciting.
Used to be the city of Oprah, now it's the city of
the Pope.
There you go. And you, the minister.
I'm the Minister Joe.
The minister of smoke.
Yeah, I do my best.
Well, somebody has to. Now, speaking of doing your best.
Doing your best, exactly. There's your segue. Good job.
Segue.
Good job. That's why your birthday's coming up. And that's why I was
picking it up. Yeah, 630 years old tomorrow. So there you go.
Cut you in two and count your rings.
Yeah, well, 3 actually nowadays. So here we go. We're going to talk about a new anthology called Midnight Schemers and Daydream Believers. Isn't that a song?
Yeah.
Isn't that the Monkees?
The Monkees, yeah.
Yeah, and Anne Murray, isn't that her song originally?
Was it?
Yeah. I think she did it, and then they took it. Yeah. There's something to look up.
I'm online right now. You guys keep talking.
You let me know.
Search that up.
So we're bringing in the editor, and I believe she's got a story as well in it. And this is the 5th of the series, like 5 books, and it's the Superior Shores Anthology. So Judy Penz Sheluk. So thank you for coming on the show, Judy.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. By the way, Anne Murray covered Daydream. The Monkees were first.
Oh, okay. See, I just knew that she had a version of it. I'd heard it. So
it was written by John Stewart, whoever that. Not the current John Stewart. Actually, I was thinking it might have been one of those.
John Stewart used
songs.
to work with Fleetwood Mac and Stevie Nicks and stuff. And in fact, Stevie Nicks used to sing on the background on a lot of his stuff.
Really? I went to see Stevie Nicks.
The circle is complete.
Yeah. John Stewart. Yeah, I know some of his stuff. He's actually okay. Yeah, you hear it all here. This is why people come to the
Yes.
They hear, because this is where you get the real news. None of that fake stuff and not politics. This is like real serious stuff because you need it to know that.
I did.
Right?
Every show is a fortune cookie. You crack this open, don't know what you're getting inside.
I think Forrest Gump took that line. But with chocolate.
Well, that's candy. That's a box of chocolates. I'll do the original.
Yeah, you have to do a little changes there. So what are you doing another anthology for? Isn't 4 enough? Why would you do 5? That's a lot of work.
Honestly, they are a tremendous amount of work, and it's not as if you're making millions on them, right? By the time I pay the authors, because I don't do royalty share, because I've been in a royalty share situation with anthologies that I've not published or edited. And if you're splitting royalties 22 ways, you're lucky if you ever earn out $3, right? So I sort of feel like, everybody at least deserves like $30 or whatever. So I pay them outright. I send them all a paperback copy. So that's a cost. And then, my own time, I don't even factor that in because that would be like, I'd be depressing. So it's, if I break even within a year or two, I'm generally, that's all I really hope for. I don't know. I got my start, Alan, as a short story writer. It was the thing that made me think, oh, maybe I can really do this. That validation of somebody saying, yes, I like it enough that I'm going to put it in this journal. That meant a lot to me. And I can remember going to Sleuth of Baker Street in Toronto. We had like this book launch, and there was like a cake, and it was just really so exciting for me. And so I sort of feel I want to sort of pay that forward. So a lot of the authors in the collection have other stories, but there's always one or two that this is their first or second publication, so still really new to them. And those are kind of the most fun. But I don't, I read them based on, do I like the story? Don't I like the story? Does it fit this theme? Doesn't it fit the theme? That kind of thing, right?
Oh, sure. I mean, it's if they bring you cake or not. That's
they bring me cake. But it is, so after the third one, which was Moonlight and Misadventure. I'm big on the, that sort of thing, alliteration. I said, oh, no, I'm not going to do any more. And then, I took a gap year. And then I did Larceny and Last Chances, which is, again, I love my alliteration. And that did really well. Actually, that was nominated for a Best Anthology Derringer Award, it was the inaugural Best Anthology Award. So out of, I think, 256 anthologies submitted, it got shortlisted down to 5, which is pretty darn good for, just somebody working out of their house in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario.
Did you pay for that, or?
I did not. No, it was free, like you entered. And then, so I was really excited. I knew, seeing who I was up against, that I had no chance. I said to my husband, well, this person's sort of like the Meryl Streep of the Oscars. So, where you kind of go, okay, yeah, it was just good to be nominated, right? Because you're never going to win against Meryl. And that was sort of the case. But I still felt really proud of that. Anyway, but that being said, I'd already started on the Midnight Schemer Sing, and I don't really know. The idea came to me. I liked the title. My husband said, oh, that sounds like it would be good. And so I thought, okay, 5 is a good number. And I do think this, you've heard it here first. I do think this will be my last multi-author anthology. I may put out my own collection of short stories down the road, but I think this will be my last multi-author, just because it is so much work. And it does pull me away from other things that I want to do. And time is the one resource you can't get back, right?
Right. And I would imagine, because when you take in a lot of authors and you have to kind of read over the stuff and decide who's going in and who's not.
Yeah.
That's a lot of work in itself. I mean, just stress and pressure, because you might know a lot of these writers too, right? So
I do. Yeah, so there was, I read 80 stories. I cut submissions off at 80 because one of them I got over 100, and I was like, yeah, I can't read that many stories. I just can't. So this time though, I put out the call. I said I'll cut it off at 80, and I got 80 stories within 3 weeks. So it was pretty quick. But you're right. I'm reading stories. A lot of these authors I know personally. I've met at conferences, or they're part of groups that I'm in. Some of them have won, awards or multiple awards. But you have to put all of that aside, because at the end of the day, the collection, sometimes there are stories you have to turn them down, even though they're really good stories. They don't fit the theme. Or maybe you think they do fit the theme, but then as you start reading, you go, with this collection, it seems to be lighter than the others. So there's more humor in it. Yes, there's mystery, but it's more. It doesn't have the same sort of dark noirish sort of things. And so then all of a sudden, like a really dark story just won't fit in, right? Just, even though it's good, it just won't fit. So, a lot of times you're rejecting things that are really good, but they're just not a fit for.
So anybody get mad that you reject?
I find
swear at you?
like writers are so used to rejection, right? Like we just, it is just something that we accept. And it's funny because the story that was in my story that was in Larceny, it actually was nominated and shortlisted for best short story, and that was very exciting for me because when you're putting your story in your anthology, you obviously, I'm not going to reject my own story, right? So, so it's kind of nice to know that other people thought it was good. But this one, when I was trying to figure out a story, I thought, oh yeah, I've got a story that I worked on like about 6 years ago, and I had written it and sent it to a magazine, and they rejected it. And they said, oh, we thought the ending should have been funny, and it wasn't funny. And I don't really know why, because it wasn't a funny story. But I was like, okay, whatever, put it aside. And then another call out for something, and I thought, oh, I think I can tidy up that story. So I kind of revised it and sent it. Another rejection, right? So I'm thinking, well, I think I'll take that one and see what I can do. So I reworked it and wrote it and thought, yeah, this is much better than it was, and now I can see why I was rejected, right? 5 years later, I'm a better writer, hopefully. And then I sent it to my editor, because for my own stories, I can't edit my own work.
And he didn't like the ending? It was too funny?
And she says to me, she goes, this is a great ending that needs a better story.
Wow.
Which made me laugh out loud, because this is what you want in an editor, somebody that's going to be honest with you, right? If you just want to hear how great something is, you just ask your mom or your husband or something, right? So she was great, because she sort of said, like, here, this was a bit cliched. What if have you thought about doing this or that? And I thought, well, I hadn't, but that was a pretty good idea. So anyway, I rewrote it again, and then she was happier with it, and then I sent it to a couple other people. Anyway, long story short, the story's about 1,800 words, and it took me 6 years to write it. I've written novels in 3 months. It's taken me 6 years to write this story. But
just think of all the money you made,
right? But it wasn't good enough. And I think that's the thing. If my own story has to be at least as good as the stories that are already in there, right? Like,
Says you.
Yeah. yeah. So anyway, but, so that's, why do I do it? I don't, outside of the fact that I kind of have this feeling that I should try to pay forward, how I got my start and all of that. I think now that I've done 5, I think I've paid it forward enough that I don't really feel any more sense of obligation.
When it comes down to selecting authors, is there an avenue for a new writer with anthologies, or they need to have something someplace else published before you'll even consider it for an anthology?
Anthologies are the perfect place to start. That's where I got my start, as I said. Mine was through a Sisters in Crime Toronto anthology, and at the same time I got into this other anthology. So I sort of had it was 2014, I got this bonus here of 2 short stories by 2 different anthologies. Anthologies generally, unless they're the type that invite authors, and there are anthologies like that where they just send out invites, and I'm actually been invited to one now, which is kind of cool because I've never been invited. But for the most part, like when I'm reading, and I know other editors that edit anthologies, we don't care what you've done. We just care, does the story work? Is it good? So it's a great place to get credits, publishing credits, right? These are literary journals. It's a great place to start because you're not judged on your past work, right? And you're building credits. So I do think there was one story in here. The author, it was only her second story, and I knew when I was reading it, I thought, I think she's a new writer, because I could just tell it was a really good story and it had a really good premise, but some of the things were a little bit on the clunky side. But I was like, I actually emailed her and said, is this your first story? And she said, it's only my second publication. And I said, you know what, I'm going to take a chance on you. If you're willing to work with me and be edited, I'm willing to take a chance, because again, that's part of it. Like, I want to encourage and nurture people, because that was what got me started. But other than that, basically, it's very much just read it. I either like it or I don't. I usually know within the first 2 or 3 paragraphs whether I'll read them to the end, unless they've got like ridiculous amounts of swearing which aren't relevant, or werewolves. I don't get werewolves at all. So I even put in the call it, no werewolves. And yet, every time I get somebody sends something with a werewolf and says, well, I know you don't want werewolves, but I have a really unique take on werewolves. Well, I don't care. I don't like werewolves. Like,
zombies, okay.
Like Harry
werewolves,
Potter,
no.
and who can argue with Harry Potter, right? So,
What makes a good story for you then? Like, what is it that catches you? Is it, of course, it has to fit kind of a theme, an idea when you're doing an anthology and all that, and size and all that sort of stuff. But is there, what elements do you look for, or is that?
it's like anything, it's like a book, any book or anything. It's like, does the opening grab me, right? Like, I have to be invested right from the get-go, right? Like a short story, like a novel, for instance, you can read 2-3 chapters and kind of gradually ease your way into it, right? There's no such leeway with a short story. You've got to just, boom, grab the person right away. So if I'm not grabbed within the first 2 or 3 paragraphs and I'm sort of not really caring what happens, that's not good. And then the other thing is the ending has to be, it doesn't have to necessarily be a super surprise or super twisty, but it can't be like, oh yeah, I saw that coming, halfway through. And the same can be said for mystery novels. Like, I've read novels where like halfway through I go, this is going to happen, and it does, and I'm inevitably like disappointed because I don't want to figure it out midway through, right? I want to have that element of surprise, or that something that kind of, or sometimes it's just like a bit of an uplifting, you kind of go, oh, yeah, that's I would have gone this way, but this really works. So I think that's a big part of it. And then, of course, there's always the mushy middle. Like, if you start falling asleep in the middle, that's not good either. So, so I guess I always sort of look at it like a lemon meringue pie, right? Like, you have your meringue, your middle is your lemon, which is really, really important. Then you have your crust. And if it's soggy crust or whatever, then, that's a bad ending, right? So,
Talk about me.
Yeah, I do like a lemon
soft middle.
meringue pie. I do like a good lemon meringue pie. So, but this actually got inspired, believe it or not. And I don't know if you remember this movie. If you haven't seen it in a long time, it still really holds up. But where we have our cottage, it's somewhat remote, and so our internet, we're not streaming anything. We have internet, but it's not like the kind we're going to stream, Netflix all day long or whatever. So we watch a lot of DVDs, and we buy them at Value Village or whatever kind of clearance bin. Anyway, we watched One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which is pretty. I think it came out in probably the early 70s. It really holds up. A young Jack Nicholson, and it kind of made me think, wow, like here's this guy. The story is. Basically, he comes up with this scheme. He doesn't want to do hard labor in prison, so he comes up with this scheme that he's insane, and so they send him to a mental institution. And of course, that really didn't work out that well for him, considering they give him a lobotomy at the end. But and if you haven't seen it, oh well, I've just spoiled the ending.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, the point is, he was sort of the ultimate daydream believer and midnight schemer, right? Because he dreamt up this way of dodging this manual labor and thinking that it was all going to be good. And then, of course, it wasn't, right? It's just such a great movie. And so when I was watching it, I was thinking, oh, yeah, like that's kind of the sort of characters that I'm looking for, the R.P. McMurphys, the guys that are just, or the women that are just, have an idea and believe in it, but as the reader, it's not going to work out for them, right? And that's what I was kind of looking for, is that sort of, here's this great idea that I have, but the reader's going, yeah, that's not going to work out, right? and it doesn't most of the time. So anyway, you guys not seen that movie?
I've seen it 100 times.
Yeah.
Put it in the basket, Chief. Put it in the basket.
Yeah. It's such a great movie. And Louise Fletcher, she was just horrible.
Well, she won.
Yeah. And Ken Kesey.
Ken Kesey.
I was just doing a thing because, he's in the 60s, I'm writing, and he was big on the LSD, right? He did the bus.
Yeah.
And took it across the country and got arrested and was very pro-LSD at the time. That's why so hallucinogenics.
Well, as a matter of fact, I used to be the senior editor of New England Antiques Journal. And so I would get press releases sent to me all the time. And the one was from an auction house in San Francisco. I cannot remember the name of the auction house, but they had the original the original manuscript of Cuckoo's Nest from Kesey and signed. And it had a different name than Nurse Ratched. And then he was going to be sued because that person could recognize himself. Because this was basically based on a personal experience he had that he went into one of these, probably because he had an LSD overdose.
No, actually, he was working in them.
Oh, he's working. Oh,
yeah, there's 2 movies on Tubi about him right now, and one follows his life and one follows his bus trip.
Really?
Yeah, he was working in and out of them, and that's where he got the ideas. Yeah, and he even sued the movie makers for that movie because of Nurse Ratched. So that's a different story. But
oh, interesting. And the other interesting thing is she never really did anything else after that. I mean, she was so talented, but she kind of just.
Let me ask you back. Let me go back to a process question, perhaps, but something. I'm gonna stick with the new writers because that's what they hear about anthologies, right? I want to write a story. I need to get myself out there. Where do I go to find out what people are wanting? What's submittable? Where's the location that says, you need to send me the science fiction. Send Judy a story. Here it is. Where do I go?
So, depends what you write, obviously. If you write mystery and suspense, or that, if you're in that lane, then there is a free group you can join called the Short Mystery Fiction Society. And they are the ones that actually do the Derringer Awards. So they've got about 1,100 members. It's all online. And there's a very active IO digest where you can ask questions or people will post and say, hey, this anthology is accepting whatever. That's where I posted my call out. So it's great. It's great. Now, like anything, these digests, you can get people that go into the weeds and you have to ignore some of the noise. But it's a fabulous organization simply because it's free and there's, lots of people willing to tell you different publications that you could look into. And I think they have a database. So that works out really well. I know if you write science fiction, there is a science fiction society that I don't know if there's a cost to join, but they would be a good avenue for that. I will say that I will read virtually anything and watch virtually anything but science fiction, so I'm not the one to ask about that. I've never seen Star Wars, for example, so that'll give you an idea or Star Trek for that. Not my thing. My husband, on the other hand, loves them both. So that would be another thing. So basically it's like, if you write romance, then you're going to try to find, those lines. But I think a lot of conferences will also have an anthology component. So for instance, BoucherCon, which goes to a different city each year and will be in Calgary in October 2026. They currently have a anthology call out, so open to blind submissions, and I believe it closes the end of September. And basically, you have to fit their theme, which is border crossing, and they, they'll have independent readers reading it and that kind of thing. So, if you know of different conferences, they often will have an anthology component. So there's lots of different ways you can kind of look. And then I think there's duotrope. There's all kinds of things. But I find if you're in a group, if you can join some sort of group, then you can talk to other authors and they might know something and they'll tell you about, and that's kind of how it works, right? I tell you, you tell me, and everybody's happy. So, but I honestly, outside of mystery and suspense, I'm not really familiar with other short story publications because that's the only thing I write, right? And so I'm not well versed in other things. If you write sort of literary fiction, you could, Google literary fiction publications. I know there's one in New Orleans called Thema. I've had about 5 stories published in there. They're not mystery. They're just plain stories. And so, there's different ones. So you just basically, start looking and then take your chances, because I do think they are looking for fresh voices a lot of times, right? And so yeah, it helps. And I do think short story, to write a good short story, it really does boil down like an idea to the nuts and bolts, right? There's no room to, dipsy doodle and add a bunch of characters that may or may not be important down the road. There's no room for like a lot of description. So you're paring everything down, right? And so I think that makes you a better writer.
Well, there you go. Now you heard it all. You hear it all here. That's why people come here. So you have a main theme in your mind when you did this, like Midnight Schemers, Daydream Believers. Do you put together a larger story by all these small short stories? Do you do them in a certain order to try and create a larger story?
Yeah, so yes and no. So what I do is once I've decided on my stories and they've all been edited and all of that, I do a spreadsheet. Okay, like I came from an accounting background, so some things you can never leave behind. So I list all the stories by word count. And so then, and then I look at, okay, my 22 stories. I always list my story last because I don't feel like I should put myself ahead of anybody else. So my story's last. So that means whatever story leads into me has to be completely different. So my story for this was only about 1,800 words. So I wanted a really long story to lead into it, like a 5,000 word story. And so that I found one, right? Now that story happened to have a down on his luck dad that's living on the street. And there's another story in the collection where there's a true homeless guy who's living in the tunnels. You can't have 2 of those together because that would be too repetitive. So that other story immediately then goes to more the front of the line, right? Just by the fact that you want separation from those 2. Even though they're very different, there's still a slight theme that's the same there, right? So you want those sort of apart. And then I pick my generally the first story in the collection is, if not my favorite, my second favorite, right? And it's based on that. My first story, I try to keep it at around 3,000 words, so people it's not super short, and it's not super long, so people are kind of getting into it. And then from that sort of sets the stage. So then I go, okay, that was my favorite story, my second favorite story, my third favorite story. Then I start looking at word counts, right? So 5,000, 3,000, 2,200, 5,000, 3,000, 22. So there's a mix, right? So that when people are reading, they're not looking always at one long story after the other. Just like when you're reading a book, you don't want to read a book where every single chapter is like 25 pages long, right? Sometimes you just want to break in a little short chapter, right? So it's kind of the same. So. Oh,
really? Let me write that down. Oops.
Well, I write really short chapters as a rule. Like my longest chapter in a book will only ever might get to 2,000 words, and they're generally more under 1,000 words. That's me. I like reading books that have short chapters because I always sort of think, if I'm tired and I'm reading and I look and it's only 3 pages, I'll go, I can read that. But if I look and it's like 12 pages, I'll go, forget it, I'll read it tomorrow, right? Like that's me. So I tend to write short chapters. And even my short stories, they tend to be short, like under 2,000 words. I just tend to write shorter than, and some people tend to write like 5,000, 6,000 words or whatever, like they just write longer. So, anyway, it's basically a mix and just trying to find the flow and, making sure that you don't have 2 sort of homeless people, one after the other, or, so you're trying to vary that style a bit so that it's not predictable or something. But then, I've had people say, oh, you do all that? I just pick out the stories by authors I know. So,
So which author's terrible to work with?
No, they're all wonderful. I'm not gonna, first of all, I've actually never had a bad experience. And as you say, even the people that I've rejected, now I will say that I am probably the kindest rejecter you will ever meet, because I don't just, first of all, once I've made the decision, I let the author know right away. I don't wait until, all the decisions have been made, because I look at it this way. Just because it's not right for this collection doesn't mean it's not right for something else. So why should that person wait 3 or 4 months to find out it's a no when I already know it's a no, and they'd have 3 or 4 months to find another place for it, right? Just seems fair, seems decent to let people know. So I always let them know when I know, and then I always try to tell them, I don't just say, no, it's not a no in a form letter. I always say, it's a no, but this is why. I didn't feel it quite met the theme because of this. Or, whatever. And then I'll even go on one step further and say, if I was to give you any advice, I would suggest you might want to take a look at this character and possibly modify their role or something. Right? And try to give a little bit of advice without being like, I'll know it all about it, right? So, because I just feel like I've been rejected, and it let's face it, it sucks.
It's a turn on. I like it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I've told this story before, but I was the volunteer intake coordinator for Bouchercon Toronto's Passport to Murder anthology. So 120 stories came in. I format them properly and send them to the editors so that they're all blind judged and everything. And then the judges, they made their decision on the stories that they selected, which I think were about 20 stories. And then I was charged with sending the acceptance letters to the authors that were accepted and the rejection letters to the authors that were rejected. And they were form letters, right? But I had to send myself a rejection. Now that was humbling.
Yeah. So you tell yourself how bad you did.
Yeah. But anyway, because I've been on that side of having somebody say, no, you're not good enough. That's what it feels like. And maybe they did like it, but it just didn't think it was going to fit. But nobody tells you that. It's just a form, right? Sorry, you didn't make the cut. So to me, I feel like I want to at least give that person some hope that, this story it could be better, or it's good, it's just not good for this. But just to leave them with some sort of hope, because it's not easy. Like, rejection is difficult, and so really, why not make it a little less difficult?
Awfully Canadian of you.
Yeah, I'm very Canadian. That's true. It's true. We're so nice.
Yeah, except for me.
That's okay. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with being too nice. I'd rather be too nice than not nice enough. And I really don't get people, and I've had this, where you just never hear back. Like, to me, that's just rude, right? Like,
yeah, because I want to tell people how bad they are. So
you do not. Canadian people.
Oh, yes, he does.
Are nice.
No, I'm a little jaded from the American side. Anyway. So listen, let's talk about where people can find you, find the great Judy.
Like, the great Judy, the great and powerful
website. Where do they find you? So and the book.
My website is judypenzsheluk.com. So Judy Penz, Penz, like Mercedes-Benz but with a P, and Sheluk, which is Sheluk. So that's my website, and this book is in print and ebook, Kobo, Nook, Kindle, and all of that. And so you can find it by either going to that, bookstore, Amazon or whatever, or Kobo, or you can go to books2read.com/midnight-schemers. And the 2 is the number 2. So books, and that will show you a whole list of different bookstores. So, so one link kind of takes you to the different bookstores so, Yeah, so that's where you can find me, and I'm hopeful that that it gets good reception. So far, it has, but it's only been out about a week, so time will tell.
Well, there we go. Well, everyone, get out there and buy this book. Poor
Yeah,
Judy.
buy the book.
She doesn't have even. She can't even stream Netflix. She's in such dire straits.
If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be able to. Would have never watched Cuckoo's Nest again. So
yeah, she needs help. Help this nice Canadian out. Buy a book or two. Buy one for everyone you know.
Or even better, take my story and turn it into the movie of the week.
Yeah, there you go. See, now we got it going.
Where's Reese Witherspoon and Nicole Kidman when you need them, eh?
Yeah, they're always busy. Too busy. They never take my call anymore. So.
Oh, they're forget it then.
Yeah, something I did. I don't know. Anyway, Midnight Schemers and Daydream Believers. And it's 22 stories of mystery and suspense. Superior Shores Anthology, and it's the 5th one, Book 5. And Judy Penz Sheluk. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Alan.
Yep.
This has been a production of the House of Mystery Radio Show. To find out more about our show, guests, or hosts, go to our website at houseofmysteryradio.com.